The chandeliers of Lady Cavendish's ballroom cast their dazzling light upon London's elite, yet I stood in a shadowed alcove, a quiet sentinel in my modest lavender gown. My sisters, Helena, Beatrice, and Georgina, shone at the ball's heart, oblivious to the whispers that followed their father. "The creditors are circling, Elara," Aunt Agatha murmured, her voice a chill against the gaiety. At 8 and 20, I had long accepted my role as the overlooked daughter of Lord Ashworth. My sister's brilliance, however, was funded by my maternal grandmother's legacy, my inheritance, a quiet sacrifice that funded their dazzling seasons and secured their futures. My own prospects were the price. "Providence has been kind to us," I replied diplomatically to Aunt Agatha, my fingers tightening around my fan. Her gaze was sharp. "Providence indeed," she sniffed, "though I wonder if it will be as kind when the creditors come calling again. Your father's ventures are failing, my dear. Whispers have already begun." A cold dread settled. The money was gone, all of it. I had nothing more to give. Across the room, my father, Lord Ashworth, stood flushed with wine, gesturing animatedly. At 53, he retained the handsome features of his youth, but years of excess and ill-advised investments had taken their toll since Mother's death. The orchestra struck up a new melody, and the crowd parted like the Red Sea. A hush fell as a tall figure appeared at the entrance. "The Duke of Thorne," announced the footman, his voice carrying across the silent room. Lord Caspian Blackwood, the 5th Duke of Thorne, stood framed, his expression as cold and remote as his reputation. At 3 and 30, he commanded attention not merely for his ancient title, but for the formidable presence he brought. His dark hair was cut fashionably close, accentuating the sharp planes of his face and the penetrating intensity of his gray eyes. "Well," murmured Aunt Agatha, suddenly alert, "this is unexpected. His Grace rarely graces these gatherings." I observed the ripple of excitement. Mothers with eligible daughters straightened, young ladies adjusted their curls. "I heard he's finally seeking a bride," whispered a young woman nearby. "Lady Isolde Montague is said to be the front-runner." "Of course," replied her companion. "A duke doesn't marry just anyone." "Your father is about to make a grave mistake," Aunt Agatha said suddenly, nodding toward where Lord Ashworth was weaving his way toward the Duke. My heart sank. "Excuse me, Aunt Agatha." I moved quickly, intercepting my father before he could reach the Duke. "Father," I said quietly, taking his arm, "perhaps you might introduce me to Lady Durham. I've been hoping to discuss her charitable work." "Not now, Elara," he slurred, attempting to shake off my hand. "Can't you see? Thorne is here. This is our opportunity. Father, please." "Lord Ashworth," came a deep voice, and I found myself looking up into the impassive face of the Duke of Thorne himself. His gray eyes held a penetrating intensity, seeing through every defense I had ever constructed. "Your Grace," my father's face lit with undisguised eagerness. "What an honor. May I present my eldest daughter, Lady Elara Ashworth." "Lady Ashworth." He offered a shallow bow. "Your Grace," I curtsied, keeping my eyes downcast as propriety demanded. The air around him crackled, making me acutely aware of my vulnerability. "I understand you manage your father's household," he continued, surprising me with this knowledge. His voice was low, yet carried an undeniable authority. "I do, Your Grace, and quite capably from what I hear." Before I could respond, a commotion at the entrance drew everyone's attention. How could he know such a private detail? His gaze unsettling, his knowledge more so. It felt as though he had already stripped away my facade. Lady Isolde Montague had arrived, resplendent in crimson silk that set off her dark hair and fair complexion. At 6 and 20, the widowed countess was considered London's most beautiful, her every appearance a triumph. "Ah, there she is," murmured my father. "The woman everyone expects you to marry, Your Grace." If the Duke was offended, he gave no sign. "Expectations," he said coolly, "are rarely of interest to me." His eyes returned to me, studying me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Lady Ashworth, I should like to call on you tomorrow. There is a matter I wish to discuss." I stared at him in undisguised shock. "With me, Your Grace?" "Indeed." The faintest suggestion of amusement touched his lips. 3 o'clock. I trust that will be convenient." Without waiting, he bowed and moved away, leaving my father and I in stunned silence. "What in heaven's name was that about?" my father demanded. I shook my head slowly. "I have no idea." But as I watched the Duke's tall figure retreating, a strange premonition swept through me. Tomorrow, I sensed, would change everything. The drawing room of Ashworth House had never seemed so small as with the Duke of Thorne within it. His commanding presence shrank its faded grandeur, highlighting the worn carpet and discolored wallpaper. I sat perched on the settee, back straight, hands folded. Across from me, the Duke occupied a wingback chair, regarding me with the same unsettling gaze. "You must be wondering why I've come," he said finally. "I confess I am curious, Your Grace." I was proud of how steady my voice sounded. "I'll be direct, Lady Ashworth. I require a wife." I blinked. "I see. No, I don't believe you do." A shadow of a smile crossed his face. "I require a specific type of wife, one who understands discretion and duty, one who can manage a household without drama or excessive demands on my time, one who has no illusions about romance." He leaned forward slightly. "I've observed you, Lady Ashworth. You've sacrificed your prospects for your sister's futures, managed your father's household through difficult circumstances. You are practical, discreet, harboring no illusions about marriage among our class." I felt as though the air had been sucked from the room. Lord Caspian Blackwood's gaze was as sharp and unyielding as the winter wind, though the afternoon sun streamed weakly through the drawing-room windows. "I confess, Miss Ashworth," he began, his voice devoid of warmth, "I am remarkably well informed of your family's private affairs." My cheeks flushed with an unwelcome heat, though I held my posture rigid on the worn settee. He knew. All of it. The whispers, the mounting debts, father's ill-advised ventures that had brought us to the precipice of ruin. "Your father has made unwise investments," he continued as if reading from a ledger. "His creditors are circling. Without intervention, the Ashworth name will be disgraced within months." The starkness of his words left no room for denial, only a cold, hard truth. He then laid out the terms, a cold tapestry woven with golden threads. As his Duchess, I would command the means to clear our debts, to secure my sister's futures, to protect father from his worst impulses. In return, my duties would be clear. Manage his vast households, attend functions when required, present a united and dignified front to society. He offered me Silvermere, his principal seat, and all his other properties. Materially, I would want for nothing. It was a business transaction laid bare. Yet I found myself compelled to ask, despite the impropriety, "Forgive my impertinence, Your Grace, but why me? Surely there are dozens of young ladies of good family who would accept such an arrangement gladly." For a fleeting moment, a flicker, a momentary vulnerability, crossed his gray eyes, quickly masked by his customary impassivity. "There are rumors about me as well, Miss Ashworth," he admitted, his voice dropping slightly. "Some true, some fabricated. A suitable marriage would put many of them to rest." I saw it then, with chilling clarity. He required a shield, a respectable, undemanding wife who would deflect the whispers that followed him, leaving him free to attend to his responsibilities. Not a partner, not a companion, certainly not a love. Simply a barrier against the world's judgment. He rose, his decision seemingly made. "I do not require an immediate answer. Take 24 hours to consider my offer. I shall return tomorrow at the same time." With a shallow bow, he departed, leaving me alone in the drawing room. I remained motionless on the settee, the last rays of afternoon sun casting long shadows across the faded carpet. His offer was both salvation and a prison, a choice between my family's ruin and my own emotional interment. What choice did I truly have? It felt like another sacrifice, the ultimate one, though what was a heart compared to a family's honor? An hour later, the drawing room door burst open, and father stormed in, his face wild with excitement. "Is it true?" he demanded, his voice nearly vibrating with nervous energy. "Thorne has offered for you." His man of business had clearly wasted no time. "Yes," I replied quietly, "though how you've heard of it already I cannot imagine." He paced the room, a caged animal sensing freedom. "Elara, do you understand what this means? We are saved, all of us. He clapped his hands together. A duke, by heaven! And not just any duke, Thorne. He knows about our financial situation, I said, rising to meet his frantic energy with my own quiet resolve. That's why he's offering. Father waved this away impatiently. What does it matter why? The result is the same. It matters to me, I countered, though my voice remained steady. He doesn't want love, Father. He wants convenience. Love! He barked a laugh, a harsh, unfamiliar sound. What has love to do with marriage? You're 8 and 20, Elara. Long past the age when you might expect romantic nonsense. Thorne offers you position, wealth, security, everything we thought beyond your reach. I turned away, staring out at the small garden behind our home. Once it had been mother's pride, filled with roses and jasmine. Now it lay neglected, much like my own suppressed dreams. I haven't given him my answer yet, I said. He returns tomorrow. Father gripped my shoulders, turning me to face him, his desperation a raw, ugly thing. Elara, listen to me. There is no choice to make. By next month, we will lose this house. Your sister's marriages will be tainted by scandal. Everything you've sacrificed for Helena and the others will be destroyed. I saw the fear in his eyes, the same fear that had driven him to ruin us. How many times had I covered for him, stretched our limited resources? I know, I said softly, the words a quiet promise to myself, a silent vow to my blood. I know what must be done. The following afternoon, when Lord Caspian Blackwood returned, I was waiting. I had spent the intervening hours preparing myself, building walls around my heart, reminding myself that this was simply another duty to be fulfilled. You've made your decision, he said, his voice as unreadable as ever. I have, I replied, meeting his gaze steadily. I accept your offer, Your Grace. Something that might have been relief crossed his face, a fractional softening. Caspian, he said, if we are to be married, you should use my given name. Caspian, I repeated, the name unfamiliar on my tongue, a new word marking a new fate. He reached into his coat and withdrew a small velvet box. This belonged to my mother, he said, opening it to reveal a magnificent emerald ring surrounded by diamonds. The Thorne betrothal ring. As he slid it onto my finger, his hand brushed against mine, a brief electric contact that sent an unexpected shiver through me. The ring was heavy, its weight a physical reminder of the commitment I had just made. We will announce our engagement at Lady Ramsgate's ball next week, he continued, his tone regaining its usual formality. The wedding will take place at Silvermere in 1 month's time. So soon? I couldn't hide my surprise. I see no reason for delay, he replied, though his expression softened fractionally. Unless you require more time? No, I said quickly. A month is acceptable. He nodded, satisfied. My solicitor will call on your father this afternoon to discuss the settlement. I've taken the liberty of instructing him to address the most pressing of your family's debts immediately. A rush of gratitude, unexpected and unwelcome, warmed my chest. Thank you, I managed. Caspian studied me for a long moment, his gray eyes unreadable. I believe we will suit, Elara, he said finally. We are neither of us given to excessive sentiment or unrealistic expectations. As he bowed over my hand in farewell, I wondered if he truly believed that, or if, like me, he merely hoped it was true. The journey to Thorne Manor took the better part of a day, winding through the rolling countryside of Kent. I, now the Duchess of Thorne, after a small but dignified wedding ceremony, watched the changing landscape from the window of the Duke's luxurious traveling carriage. My husband Caspian sat across from me, a silent, imposing presence. In the months since our engagement, I had seen him only a handful of times, brief, formal encounters focused entirely on practical matters. The settlement had been beyond generous. Our betrothal announcement met with astonishment by society, and the wedding itself conducted with quiet efficiency. Through it all, Caspian had remained polite but distant. Now, as husband and wife, we were alone together for the first time, and I found myself unexpectedly nervous. We'll arrive before nightfall, Caspian said, breaking the silence that had stretched between us for miles. I've sent word ahead to ensure all is prepared. I look forward to seeing Thorne Manor, I replied, my voice carefully neutral. I understand it's quite beautiful. It has been in my family for 10 generations. A note of genuine pride, a rare warmth, entered his voice. The east wing dates to Tudor times, though most of the current structure was built by my great-grandfather in the last century. And you've lived there all your life? I asked, genuinely curious. Until I was sent to Eton at 10. Yes. His expression closed again, a familiar curtain falling. I sensed there was more to the story, some old wound that still pained him, but I didn't press. Our arrangement didn't include such intimacies. Will we have guests immediately? I asked instead, shifting the conversation to more practical ground. I should like to become familiar with the household first. Caspian's mouth curved in what might almost have been a smile. I anticipated as much. We'll have a period of privacy before society descends upon us. Though my grandmother, the Dowager Duchess, maintains a dower house on the estate, she will expect to meet you promptly. I shall look forward to it, I said diplomatically. Caspian raised an eyebrow. You may revise that opinion after meeting her. My grandmother is formidable. I'm not easily intimidated, Your Grace. Caspian, he corrected gently. And yes, I'm counting on that quality. The carriage crested a hill, and suddenly Thorne Manor lay before us, its pale stone walls gleaming in the late afternoon sunlight. I caught my breath. It was magnificent, a perfect example of classical architecture, with symmetrical wings extending from a grand central block, topped by a pediment and dome. Extensive gardens stretched away on all sides, and beyond them, a lake shimmered silver in the distance. It's beautiful, I whispered. Yes, Caspian said, watching my reaction closely. It is. Thorne Manor rose before us, its pale stone gleaming in the late afternoon sun, a monument to centuries of power and prestige. A long line of servants, stiff and formal in their liveries, waited on the sweeping steps, a silent judgment for the new Duchess. Caspian descended from the luxurious carriage first, then turned to offer his hand. My own felt small and trembling within his as I stepped down, acutely aware of the dozens of eyes fixed upon me. Mr. Finch, Caspian announced, gesturing to a distinguished older man with silver hair and an impeccable bearing. My butler, who has served my family since my father's time. Mr. Finch bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect. Caspian then introduced Mrs. Davies, the stern-faced housekeeper, and Bess, my appointed lady's maid, a pretty young woman with kind eyes. I inclined my head gracefully to each, offering a small smile. I am pleased to meet you all, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, and I look forward to becoming acquainted with each of you. Welcome to Thorne Manor, Your Grace, Mr. Finch replied, his voice a smooth baritone. We are honored to serve you. Caspian led me through a succession of magnificent rooms, marble floors gleaming, gilt-framed portraits watching from the walls. The grandeur was breathtaking, a world away from the faded elegance of Ashworth House. My chambers, located in the West Wing, exceeded even my heightened expectations. A sitting room decorated in soft blues and creams opened into a spacious bedchamber dominated by a massive four-poster bed draped in silk. Beyond lay a dressing room and a private bathing chamber, fitted with modern conveniences that felt almost impossibly luxurious. Oh, I breathed, turning slowly to take it all in. It's perfect. For the first time, a flicker of genuine pleasure crossed Caspian's face. I'm glad you approve. He gestured to a door set into the far wall of the bedchamber. My rooms adjoin yours, though naturally your privacy will be respected. My cheeks warmed at the unspoken boundaries of our arrangement. Of course, thank you. Dinner will be at 8, he continued smoothly. I thought you might wish to rest and refresh yourself after the journey. Yes, that would be most welcome. He bowed slightly. Then I'll leave you to settle in. Bess will attend you. After he departed, I sank onto a delicate chaise lounge, suddenly overwhelmed by the reality of my new position. I was a duchess, mistress of this grand estate, wife to one of the most powerful men in England, yet I had never felt more alone. Had I simply traded one form of solitude for another, grander cage? Bess proved to be efficient and unobtrusive, helping me change from my traveling clothes into an evening gown of deep blue silk. It was one of the many new garments commissioned for my trousseau, a vivid contrast to my former modest lavender. As the maid arranged my hair in a simple, elegant style, I studied my reflection. The woman who gazed back looked different somehow, more poised, more elegant, every inch a duchess. You look beautiful, Your Grace, Bess said softly. Thank you, Bess. I managed a small smile. I suppose I should go down. I wouldn't wish to keep His Grace waiting. I found Caspian in a smaller, more intimate dining room than the formal hall I had seen earlier. He stood as I entered, his expression warming fractionally as he took in my appearance. The blue suits you, he said, coming forward to escort me to the table. I hope your rooms are comfortable. Very much so. Everyone has been most welcoming. Dinner was a quiet affair, the silence broken only by the soft movements of the footman. I found myself studying my husband covertly as we ate, the warm glow of the candles softening his severe features, revealing a handsomeness I had not fully appreciated before. You have questions, Caspian said suddenly, catching my gaze. Please ask them. I hesitated. I was wondering about your daily routine, so that I might adapt mine accordingly. Thoughtful of you. He set down his wineglass. I rise early, often before dawn. I break my fast lightly, usually while reviewing correspondence in my study. Mornings are devoted to estate business, meetings with my steward, tenant farmers, and so forth. After luncheon, I ride if the weather permits, or attend to other matters if it does not. In the evenings, dinner, as we are doing now. His mouth quirked. When we have guests, there will be the usual entertainments: cards, music, conversation. When we are alone, I generally retire to the library. You enjoy reading? I asked, genuinely curious. I do. For the first time, a real warmth entered his voice. The library is perhaps my favorite room in the house. My father collected extensively, and I've continued the tradition. I should like to see it, I said. I'm quite fond of reading myself. Caspian regarded me with new interest. What do you prefer to read? History primarily and poetry. I hesitated, then added, though I confess a weakness for novels as well, particularly Mrs. Radcliffe's. Gothic romances? Caspian looked faintly amused. I wouldn't have expected that. They're an escape, I admitted, from everyday concerns. We all need such escapes occasionally. He signaled for the footman to remove our plates. Would you care to see the library now? It's not too forward of me to suggest. Not at all. I should like that very much. The library proved to be everything I could have dreamed. A vast two-story room lined with thousands of volumes. Comfortable seating was arranged near the fireplace, and large windows promised to flood the space with light during the day. It's magnificent, I breathed, running my fingers along the spines of the nearest books. I've never seen so many volumes in a private collection. Feel free to read anything that interests you, Caspian said, watching me with evident pleasure. They're as much yours now as mine. I turned to thank him and found him standing closer than I'd realized. For a moment, neither of us spoke, and something electric seemed to pass between us. Then Caspian stepped back, the moment broken. It's growing late, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Perhaps we should retire. Of course, I folded my hands before me. Good night, Caspian. Good night, Elara. He hesitated, then added, I hope you will be happy here. As I made my way back to my chambers alone, I wondered if that were truly possible. Contentment, perhaps. Security, certainly. But happiness? That seemed a luxury not included in our arrangement. Yet as I lay in my new bed that night, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of Thorne Manor settling around me, I found myself thinking of the way Caspian's eyes had softened when he spoke of books. The unexpected gentleness in his voice when he'd wished for my happiness. Perhaps, I thought, as sleep claimed me, there might be more to the Duke of Thorne and to our marriage than I had initially believed. The weeks that followed settled into a surprisingly comfortable rhythm. Each morning, I broke my fast alone in my sitting room, then met with Mrs. Davies to discuss household matters. The housekeeper had initially been wary of her new mistress, but my genuine interest in learning Thorne's customs and my respectful treatment of the staff gradually won the older woman's approval. By the second week, I had visited every part of the vast house, from the kitchens to the attics, introducing myself to each member of the household and learning their names and duties. I had reviewed the menus, the wine cellar inventory, the linen stores, and a dozen other aspects of running such a grand establishment. Caspian, true to his word, spent his mornings attending to business. I saw little of him until the evenings when we dined together, and afterward often spent an hour or two in the library, reading in companionable silence, or occasionally discussing books or estate matters. It was a peaceful existence, if somewhat lonely. I wrote regular letters to my sisters, Helena, Beatrice, and Georgina, and to my father, receiving enthusiastic responses about their newly elevated social positions as relatives of the Duchess of Thorne. I tried not to notice the absence of any inquiry about my own happiness. Do we ever truly know what fills another's heart when their letters only speak of what pleases them? On the 10th day after our arrival, Caspian informed me over breakfast that they would be receiving their first visitor. I looked up from my toast as Caspian cleared his throat. "My grandmother wishes to meet you," he announced, his gaze meeting mine across the breakfast table. "Lady Eleanor. She maintains a dower house on the estate." I felt a flutter of nerves. "I shall look forward to it, Your Grace." He raised an eyebrow, a flicker of something almost apologetic in his usually impassive eyes. "You may revise that opinion after meeting her. My grandmother is formidable. She can be rather direct." Then in a gesture so unexpected it stole my breath, his hand reached across the polished mahogany, briefly covering mine. It was a fleeting contact, warm and grounding, before he withdrew it just as quickly. "Just be yourself," he said, his voice a low murmur. "She values authenticity above all else." I nodded, smoothing the silk of my morning dress, acutely aware of the unexpected contact and the challenge that lay ahead. The carriage wound through a picturesque lane, past ancient oaks and across a small stone bridge, before Thorne Cottage appeared. It was a charming Queen Anne residence, nestled amidst formal gardens, with windows overlooking the shimmering lake that lent the estate its name. As we approached, I smoothed the pale green walking dress I had chosen, my earlier nervousness returning. "She won't bite," Caspian murmured, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "At least not immediately." I offered him a chiding glance, but a secret lightness bloomed in my chest at his attempt at humor. Lady Eleanor Blackwood, the Dowager Duchess, awaited us in a sunlit drawing room. At 73, she was a striking figure, her silver hair elegantly arranged, her posture unwavering. Her blue eyes, so like Caspian's, were sharp and assessing as they fixed on me. "So," she declared after a brief, cool greeting, "you are the girl who has turned society on its ear by capturing my grandson. Do sit down and let me look at you properly." I took the indicated seat, feeling very much like a specimen under examination. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Your Grace," I managed, my voice steady, despite the tremor in my hands. "Is it?" The old woman's mouth twitched. "We shall see about that. Caspian, pour the tea. Your grandfather always said a man should know how to serve as well as be served." To my surprise, Caspian complied without protest, moving to the tea service with practiced ease. "Now then," the Dowager continued, her piercing gaze returning to me, "tell me about yourself, and spare me the usual platitudes about being honored to join the family and so forth. I want to know what sort of woman you are." I considered my response carefully, striving for honesty without revealing too much. "I am practical," I said finally. "I value honesty and kindness above most other qualities. I enjoy reading and music, though I play only adequately. I believe in meeting one's obligations and keeping one's word." Lady Eleanor accepted her tea from Caspian, her eyes gleaming with something that might have been approval. "And what made you accept my grandson's proposal? We both know it wasn't a love match." "Grandmother," Caspian interjected, his voice a low warning. "That's enough." "Nonsense," she retorted, waving a dismissive hand. "If she's to be a Thorne Duchess, she should be able to answer a simple question." I met the older woman's gaze steadily. "Your grandson offered me security for my family and a position where I might be of use. I accepted because it seemed a fair arrangement for us both." "Honesty, indeed." The Dowager set down her cup with a decisive clink. "And now that you've had a fortnight to assess your bargain, do you find it satisfactory?" I was acutely aware of Caspian watching me. "I find Thorne Manor and its people welcoming. Your grandson has been considerate and generous. I have no complaints." "No complaints?" The Dowager's lips curved. "A diplomatic answer. Caspian, I believe I'd like to speak with your Duchess alone for a few moments. Perhaps you might admire the new roses my gardener has cultivated." Caspian looked as though he might protest, but after a moment's hesitation, he nodded. "I'll return shortly," he said to me, his eyes conveying a silent apology before he departed. Once we were alone, the dowager's formidable manner softened subtly, a shift that revealed a hint of vulnerability. I was married at 19, she confided, a surprising personal revelation. To a man I had met exactly twice. He was 20 years my senior and intimidating beyond words. That must have been difficult, I said carefully, a pang of sympathy stirring within me. It was terrifying, the old woman smiled faintly. Yet we came to love each other deeply. Not at first, that came later, built day by day through small kindnesses and shared experiences. She leaned forward, her eyes suddenly intent. My grandson is a complex man, Elara. He guards himself carefully and with good reason. His childhood was not a happy one. His father, my son, was a cold, demanding man who saw weakness in any display of emotion. And Caspian's mother, poor Caroline, the dowager sighed, her gaze growing distant with old pain. She was beautiful, but frail, both in body and spirit. She died when Caspian was 8, unable to withstand the demands of her position or her husband's neglect. I'm sorry, I whispered, imagining the lonely boy Caspian must have been. After her death, my son became even more rigid in his expectations. Caspian was sent to school far too young, denied the affection he craved, taught that duty must supersede all personal desires. I did what I could, but a grandmother's influence only extends so far. The weight of her words settled heavily in the air. Why are you telling me this? I asked gently, my heart aching for the wounded boy Caspian had been. The old woman's gaze sharpened again. Because you have an opportunity I lacked with my own son, to break the cycle, to help Caspian become more than the armor he wears. I'm not certain he would welcome such interference, I said, a cautious voice in my mind reminding me of our arrangement. Our agreement is based on mutual respect and independence. Arrangements change, the dowager said shrewdly. I've watched you both today. The way you look at him when you think he isn't noticing. The way he softens in your presence, whether he realizes it or not. Heat rose in my cheeks, but before I could respond, the door opened and Caspian returned. I trust you've finished dismantling my character? He asked dryly, a subtle humor in his tone. For today, his grandmother smiled innocently, I was just telling Elara about my roses. Perhaps you might show her the gardens before you leave. As we strolled among the neatly tended flower beds a short time later, the afternoon sun warm on my shoulders, I found myself watching Caspian with new eyes. The dowager's revelations had peeled back a layer of his carefully constructed reserve, revealing the sensitive boy beneath the formidable Duke. She likes you, Caspian said, breaking into my thoughts, a rare compliment from him, which is more than can be said for most people she meets. I like her as well, I replied honestly. She reminds me of you. Caspian looked startled, stopping his walk. Most people find us entirely different. In manner, perhaps, but you share the same directness, the same clarity of purpose, I hesitated, then added, and the same kindness hidden beneath a formidable exterior. He stopped walking entirely, turning to face me fully. His gray eyes, usually so remote, held an intense, searching quality, as though seeing me for the very first time. You find me kind? He asked, his voice low. Increasingly so, I admitted, meeting his gaze steadily, though I suspect you work hard to conceal it. For a long moment neither of us spoke, the air between us thick with unspoken understanding. Then Caspian offered his arm again. We should return to the house, there's a chill in the air. Dinner that evening felt different, infused with a new warmth I hadn't dared to anticipate. Caspian seemed more present, his gaze meeting mine frequently, his questions about my day more genuine than perfunctory. I told him of my meetings with Mrs. Davies, of plans for the kitchen garden, and he listened with an attentiveness that thrilled me. My mother established several charitable initiatives in the nearby villages, he said, setting down his wineglass. Schools, a small infirmary, apprenticeships for promising young people. After her death, my grandmother oversaw them, but they would benefit from your attention now. He offered to have all relevant papers brought to my sitting room the following morning. I should like that very much, I replied, a hopeful flutter in my chest. Perhaps I might visit some of these establishments soon. Caspian looked at me, a faint curve to his lips. I could accompany you, if you would welcome the company." His offer, so unexpected, made my breath catch. "I would, Caspian," I said softly. "Very much so." Our eyes met across the candlelit table, and for a moment the air between us seemed charged with possibility. The following days brought a subtle but definite change to our relationship. Caspian began to include me in aspects of estate management, seeking my opinion on matters ranging from tenant disputes to the restoration of the East Wing. We rode out together often, along winding country lanes and through stretches of ancient woodland, the Kent countryside a vibrant tapestry of greens and golds around us. I was received warmly as the new duchess in the villages. My inquiries about the local families met with open hearts. At a small school in Thornfield Village, I knelt to speak with a shy little girl, her braids escaping her cap, her eyes wide with curiosity. She reminded me of myself at that age, eager yet uncertain. When I glanced up, I found Caspian watching me from the back of the room. His expression was warm, appreciative, a fleeting glimpse of emotion that made my heart quicken, vanishing the moment he realized I had noticed. In the evenings, we still retired to the library, a vast room lined with thousands of volumes, now a cherished sanctuary. Sometimes we read in companionable silence, the only sound the crackle of the fire and the lash of rain against the tall windows, illuminated by the soft glow of the chandeliers. At other times, we read passages aloud to each other or engaged in spirited debates about literature and philosophy. I discovered that beneath his reserved exterior, Caspian possessed both a formidable intellect and a dry wit that increasingly revealed itself in my presence. One night, as the rain intensified, Caspian closed his book and regarded me thoughtfully. "You're not what I expected," he said. I raised an eyebrow, a smile playing on my lips. "Is that a compliment or a complaint, Your Grace?" "Definitely a compliment." The corner of his mouth lifted. "I thought we would be compatible. I didn't anticipate that I would enjoy your company so much." The simple admission warmed me more than the fire. "I feel the same," I confessed. "Our arrangement has proven more agreeable than I dared hope." "Arrangement?" Caspian repeated the word slowly, as if tasting it. "Is that still how you think of our marriage?" Before I could respond, Mr. Finch appeared at the door, his face etched with a rare urgency. "Forgive the interruption, Your Grace," he said, "but a carriage has just arrived. Lady Isolde Montague requests accommodation for the night. She claims the weather has made travel unsafe." Caspian's expression closed immediately, all warmth vanishing as if a cold gust had extinguished the candlelight around us. "Show her to the blue guest suite," he said tersely. "Inform her we will receive her shortly." When Mr. Finch had gone, Caspian rose and moved to the fireplace, his back to me. "I apologize for this intrusion," he said stiffly. "Isolde has always been persistent." I felt a cold knot form in my stomach. "Lady Montague was a friend of yours." "We were briefly engaged 3 years ago." His voice was carefully neutral. "The arrangement ended by mutual agreement." This was news to me, and it clearly contradicted his grandmother's assertion that he had never seriously courted anyone before. "I see." I hesitated, then asked the question that had begun to trouble me. "May I ask why your engagement ended?" "The true reason?" Caspian remained silent for a long moment, then ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I had come to recognize as a sign of inner turmoil. "Isolde is complicated," he said finally. "It would be best if I spoke with her alone first." Of course, I thought. A shield, not a partner. How many unspoken truths lay behind such carefully chosen words? I rose, smoothing my skirts. "I shall retire for the evening. Elara." He reached for my hand, then stopped himself. "Thank you for understanding." But as I made my way to my chambers, a new uncertainty settled within me. I wasn't sure I understood it all. Lady Isolde Montague proved every bit as beautiful as her reputation suggested. When I finally met her the following morning in the morning room, I was struck by the contrast between us. Isolde's dark, dramatic beauty seemed to eclipse my own quieter appearance, her confident elegance a stark foil to my more reserved demeanor. "Duchess?" Isolde's curtsy was technically perfect, but somehow still suggested she was doing me a favor. "How kind of you to welcome me to Thorne on such short notice." "Not at all," I replied evenly. my composure a carefully constructed wall. We could hardly turn away a traveler in such weather. Isolde smiled, a practiced expression that didn't quite reach her eyes. Caspian has always been so very gallant, one of his many admirable qualities. Indeed, I've been simply dying to meet the woman who accomplished what so many failed to do, capturing the elusive Duke. I maintained my neutral expression. I assure you there was no capturing involved. Our marriage was entered into with clear-eyed understanding on both sides. How refreshingly pragmatic. Isolde's smile sharpened, though I confess myself surprised by Caspian's choice. He always professed to value passion above practicality. The implication hung in the air between us, as deliberate as a slap. I felt my cheeks warm, but refused to be baited. People often present different facets of themselves to different acquaintances, I said mildly. I'm sure you know His Grace in ways I do not, just as I know him in ways you cannot. Isolde's eyes narrowed fractionally. How diplomatic! I can see why Caspian might value that quality in a companion. Before I could respond, the door opened, and Caspian himself appeared, looking windblown and slightly damp from the lingering rain. Forgive me, he said, his eyes going to me first before acknowledging our guest. Isolde, I trust you slept well. Tolerably, Isolde rose gracefully, moving to kiss Caspian's cheek with familiar ease. Though I've missed our morning rides. Perhaps later when the weather clears, for old time's sake. I saw the flash of discomfort in Caspian's eyes, though his expression remained politely impassive. I'm afraid I have commitments today, but your horses will need rest after yesterday's journey. Perhaps tomorrow would be better for travel. It was a dismissal, gracefully phrased but unmistakable. Isolde's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course, she said smoothly, I wouldn't dream of imposing any longer than necessary. Throughout the day, I found myself watching the interaction between Caspian and our guest with growing unease. Isolde clearly knew Caspian well, referencing shared memories, using private jokes, touching his arm with casual intimacy. Caspian remained polite but distant, yet I couldn't help noticing how he unconsciously positioned himself, always keeping some distance between himself and his former fiancée. The day after Lady Isolde's arrival was a landscape of subtle skirmishes. She moved through Thorne Manor as if she owned it still. Each casual comment, a carefully placed dart. Each reminiscence, a calculated attempt to exclude me. She would reference shared memories, intimate jokes that had no context for me, watching my reaction with a glint in her dark eyes. Caspian remained polite, impeccably so. Yet I noticed the unconscious way he positioned himself, always a step or two removed from her, a subtle barrier to her assumed intimacy. During dinner, the candlelight flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to dance with Isolde's words. She regaled us with a story from years past, a dreadful musical at some country estate where Caspian, she claimed, had rescued her from boredom by feigning an urgent message. He was always rescuing me, she added, her gaze sliding to me, sharp and pointed. So chivalrous. Even when our engagement ended, he insisted on taking all the blame publicly, wouldn't hear a word said against me, though many would say I deserved censure. I set down my fork carefully, the cold metal a small anchor in a sea of unease. Later, as the gentlemen lingered over their port, and Isolde and I withdrew to the drawing room, her pretense of cordiality vanished like smoke. She arranged herself gracefully on a settee, her crimson gown a vibrant challenge to my own softer hues. He'll never love you, you know, she said, her voice dropping to a confidential whisper that felt more like a hiss. Caspian doesn't allow himself such vulnerabilities. A surge of anger, sharp and hot, tightened my jaw, but I kept my expression neutral. I wasn't aware that I had solicited your opinion on my marriage, Lady Isolde. Her smile was razor sharp, a predatory gleam in her eyes. Consider it friendly advice. I've known Caspian since we were children. I understand him in ways you never will. She leaned forward as if sharing a profound truth. For convenience, for respectability, for all the cold, practical reasons that have nothing to do with the heart. But when he needs passion, when he needs someone who truly knows him, she let the implication hang, a venomous thought suspended in the air. I think you overestimate your importance in his life, Lady Isolde. I replied, my voice quiet but firm, and underestimate mine. As if sensing the charged atmosphere, Caspian rejoined us then, his expression weary. I thought perhaps some music, he suggested, moving toward the pianoforte. Elara plays quite beautifully. The soft glow of the chandeliers overhead seemed to gather around him, illuminating his sincerity. Does she? Isolde's tone was laced with skepticism, but she managed a saccharine smile. How lovely! I should be delighted to hear her. Placed on the spot, I had little choice. I moved to the instrument. My fingers, usually so eager for the keys, now felt stiff. I began a Beethoven sonata, a piece that required more emotion than technical brilliance, and soon lost myself in the music, forgetting my audience. When the final notes faded, a hush fell, broken only by Caspian's quiet voice. Beautiful, he said, with a sincerity that warmed me more than the drawing room fire. Charming, Isolde added, her smile not quite reaching her eyes, though perhaps lacking the passion the composer intended. Now, Caspian, you simply must play that Mozart piece we used to practice together. The evening continued in this vein, a careful dance of social propriety and subtle sabotage. Yet I noticed how Caspian unconsciously shifted, positioning himself closer to me on the settee, his hand occasionally brushing mine in what felt like deliberate reassurance. In the privacy of my chambers, as Bess helped me prepare for bed, Isolde's words returned to haunt me. I stared at my reflection in the ornate standing mirror, searching for the elegant Duchess, but seeing only the anxious woman underneath. Had Caspian truly married me because I was the opposite of Isolde, safe, practical, undemanding? Was passion something he sought elsewhere, as she had so cruelly insinuated? The storm outside, long dormant, seemed to gather again, rain lashing against the windows, mirroring the tempest within my own heart. It felt as though my emotional security, so recently found, was now as vulnerable as a ship tossed on a stormy sea. Does a heart, once broken, truly heal? Or does it merely learn to hide its scars beneath a veneer of practicality? A soft knock at the connecting door interrupted my thoughts, a welcome distraction from the rising tide of doubt. Enter, I called, wrapping my dressing gown more tightly around myself after dismissing Bess. Caspian appeared, still fully dressed, but his cravat was loosened and his dark hair was slightly disheveled, as though he had been running his hands through it in agitation. He looked tired but determined. I owe you an apology, he said without preamble. Isolde's presence here is not coincidental. I steeled myself. I had suspected as much. He began to pace the room, his movements restless. She wrote to me several weeks ago, expressing a desire to reconcile. I responded clearly that I was married and not interested in renewing our acquaintance. This impromptu visit is her way of ignoring my wishes. He stopped, his expression pained. You asked why our engagement ended. The true reason. He met my gaze, a deep vulnerability in his gray eyes. Isolde was not a faithful woman. During our engagement, I discovered she was maintaining relationships with at least 2 other men. I gasped softly. How terrible for you. It was illuminating, he said carefully, moving to the window to stare out at the moon-swept landscape. I had believed myself in love with her. Her betrayal forced me to recognize that what I felt was infatuation, not love, that I had been seduced by her beauty and charm without truly knowing her character. After our engagement ended, I decided that marriage based on genuine respect and shared values would be preferable to one built on passion alone. And then you found me, I said softly, safe, practical, undemanding. Caspian turned, his expression suddenly fierce. Is that how you see yourself? How you believe I see you? Isn't it accurate? I met his gaze steadily. You chose me because I was the opposite of Isolde. I chose you, he said slowly, moving toward me, because when I looked at you, I saw strength, intelligence, integrity, everything Isolde lacks. He stopped before me, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. I never expected to find myself drawn to you in other ways as well. My heart began to race. What ways? The way you smile when something genuinely amuses you. The way you listen, truly listen, when others speak. The way you've made Thorne Manor feel like a home again. His voice dropped lower. The way I find myself thinking of you at odd moments throughout my day. I scarcely dared breathe. Caspian. I don't wish to presume, he said quickly. Our arrangement stands as agreed, but I wanted you to know that Isolde means nothing to me now, and that you— He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. What about me? I whispered. Instead of answering, Caspian slowly, tentatively raised his hand to my cheek. His touch was feather-light, questioning. When I didn't pull away, he leaned forward and brushed his lips against mine. A brief, gentle kiss that ended almost before it began. Good night, Elara, he murmured, stepping back. I'll ensure Isolde departs tomorrow, regardless of the weather. The morning air, crisp and clean after the night's downpour, seemed to wash away the lingering shadows of Lady Isolde Montague's presence. As her carriage rattled down the long, winding drive, her farewell, brittle with barely concealed anger, echoed in the stillness. I watched her disappear, a deep cleansing breath filling my lungs for the first time in days. Caspian, who had stood beside me on the front steps, not quite touching, but a palpable presence, wrapped an arm around my waist. She won't return uninvited, he murmured, his voice firm, reading my thoughts with an ease that still surprised me. I've made that clear. The clear skies above Thorne Manor mirrored the unexpected clarity in our own understanding. I nodded, still navigating the new intimacy that had bloomed between us. His touch, once a formal courtesy, now held a quiet possessiveness that both thrilled and unsettled me. I thought I might ride out to visit the school in Fernwood today, I said, my voice softer than intended. The headmistress wrote, asking if I might present prizes at their midsummer recitation. Would you like company? Caspian asked, his tone carefully casual. Yet I sensed a deeper yearning in the question. I looked up at him, searching his gray eyes. Yes, I said simply. I would. The prospect of sharing this small everyday duty with him felt like a promise. The day proved unexpectedly perfect. Warm sunshine dappled through the leaves of the ancient trees lining the country lanes, and a gentle breeze stirred the tall grasses of the woodland. As we rode side by side, our horses keeping a steady rhythm, I found myself, quite unbidden, sharing stories of my childhood. I spoke of my mother's early death, of the quiet determination that had driven me to keep my sister's future secure. Caspian listened, his gaze steady, occasionally offering a thoughtful hum. When I finished, he observed, "So you sacrificed much for them." "It was my duty," I replied, the phrase an automatic reflex, a truth I had lived by for so long. "No," Caspian corrected gently, his voice soft but firm. "It was your choice. There's a difference." His words resonated deeply within me, a profound reinterpretation of my past that made my heart ache with a surprising validation. Had I truly chosen it, or had I simply accepted it as fate? Later, at the small school in Thornfield Village, I knelt to speak with a shy little girl, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and trepidation as I presented her with a small prize. She reminded me, in her quiet earnestness, of myself at that age. When I glanced up, I found Caspian standing at the back of the room, watching me with an expression that made my heart quicken. Something warm and appreciative, a look of profound tenderness that vanished the moment he realized I had noticed. On the ride home, a sudden summer shower caught us halfway to Thorne Manor. We laughed, a rare, unrestrained sound from Caspian, as we raced for the shelter of an ancient oak whose massive canopy offered some protection from the sudden downpour. The scent of wet earth and rain-soaked leaves filled the air around us, a primal perfume. "Your hair is coming down," Caspian said, reaching up to brush a damp tendril from my cheek. I was acutely aware of our isolation, the intimacy of the moment beneath the whispering leaves. His fingers lingered against my skin, a feather-light touch. "It always does," I replied, my voice sounding breathless to my own ears. "My maid despairs of it." "I like it this way," he murmured, his eyes dark with an unstated longing. "Wild, free." The air between us seemed to thicken, charged with an unspoken question. I found myself leaning slightly toward him, drawn by some invisible force. For a moment I thought he might kiss me again, here beneath the ancient oak. Instead he straightened, his gaze breaking away to glance up at the sky. "The rain is letting up. We should continue before it starts again." The moment, intense and fleeting, dissolved into the practicalities of the weather, yet its echo lingered, a quiet hum between us. That evening, the strange tension between us persisted through dinner and into our usual time in the library. The fire crackled in the great hearth, a comforting presence. But I found it difficult to concentrate on my book, acutely aware of Caspian's presence across from me. The memory of his lips against mine, of his fingers brushing my cheek, hovered persistently in my thoughts. Finally, I closed my book with more force than intended. "I think I shall retire early tonight," I said, rising abruptly. "Good night, Caspian." "Elara, wait!" He stood as well, setting aside his own book. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I had come to recognize as a sign of inner turmoil. "I feel I owe you an explanation for my behavior today." I paused, my heart racing. "What behavior?" "My inconsistency." He moved closer, his expression intense. "I find myself in unfamiliar territory. Our arrangement was meant to be straightforward, but my feelings have become complicated." "Mine as well," I admitted softly, my gaze meeting his. "I told you once that I didn't want passion in my marriage, that I preferred respect and compatibility." He reached for my hand, his touch sending warmth spiraling through me. "I remember." "I'm beginning to think I was wrong," he said, his voice dropping lower. "Or rather that I failed to recognize that respect and compatibility can themselves kindle a different kind of passion. One based on genuine knowledge of another person, not merely physical attraction or infatuation." My breath caught. "What are you saying, Caspian?" "I'm saying that I want more than our original arrangement." He held my hand tightly, his gaze unwavering. "I want a real marriage, Elara, in every sense." I looked up at him, searching his face, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "Because you desire me?" "Because I'm falling in love with you," he said simply, his voice thick with a vulnerability I had never expected from him. "And it terrifies me." The words hung in the air between us, honest and raw. Tears sprang to my eyes. "It terrifies me too," I whispered, barely audible. "I never thought to find love in this marriage. I didn't dare hope for it." Caspian lifted his free hand to my face, cradling my cheek with infinite tenderness. "I spent my life believing that love was a weakness, that duty and honor were all that mattered. You've shown me how wrong I was." This time when he kissed me, there was nothing tentative about it. His lips claimed mine with a gentle passion that made my knees weaken and my heart soar. I wound my arms around his neck, drawing him closer, allowing myself to express the feelings I had been trying so hard to suppress. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, Caspian rested his forehead against mine. "Stay with me tonight," he murmured. I nodded, beyond words, and allowed him to lead me through the connecting door to his chambers, the final barrier between us falling away at last. Later, as moonlight filtered through the curtains and Caspian slept beside me, his arm draped protectively across my waist, I reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought us to this point, from a marriage of convenience to something deeper, richer, more profound than either of us had anticipated. The weeks that followed settled into a surprisingly comfortable rhythm. Our days were filled with shared duties, and our nights with increasingly passionate discoveries of each other. Where once Caspian had been reserved, now he sought opportunities to be with me, joining me for morning rides, consulting me on estate matters, even surprising me with small, thoughtful gifts that showed how carefully he observed my preferences. A first edition of my favorite poetry collection, a delicate sapphire bracelet that matched my eyes. Wildflowers gathered during his morning ride, left on my pillow with a note that made me blush. In turn, I found myself blossoming under his affection, growing more confident in my role as Duchess, and more comfortable expressing my own desires and opinions. The staff noticed the change in their master and mistress, exchanging knowing smiles when Caspian would reach for my hand, or when I would laugh openly at something he said. Even the Dowager Duchess remarked upon the transformation during one of our regular tea visits. "See, you've done what I hoped," Lady Eleanor said approvingly. "Broken through his walls." "He broke through his own walls," I corrected gently. "I merely gave him reason to try." Could this truly be the life she had once only dreamed of? A landscape of shared joy she never dared cultivate? Summer faded into a glorious autumn. The grounds of Thorne Manor transformed into a tapestry of gold and crimson. I had just begun planning our first major entertainment, a harvest festival for the estate workers and their families, when a letter arrived that would test our newfound happiness. The aroma of freshly baked bread and strong coffee usually filled the Thorne Manor breakfast room with warmth, but this autumn morning, a chill seeped into the air as I broke the seal on Caroline's letter. My sister wrote of her impending visit, her usual vivacious scrawl a balm to my heart. But then her words shifted, turning cold and sharp as winter frost. My blood ran cold as I read on, the polite script detailing Lady Isolde's renewed campaign of whispers. Isolde was telling everyone in London that my marriage to Caspian was one of convenience only, a mere placeholder until he could secure an annulment, still harboring feelings for her. The paper trembled slightly in my hands. Caspian, seated opposite me, noticed my sudden pallor. "Elara, is something amiss?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. I handed him the letter, my gaze fixed on his face as his own expression darkened with each line he read. His jaw tightened, a muscle clenching at his temple. "Ridiculous," he murmured, the word a low growl. "No one would believe such nonsense." "Caroline says many do," I replied, my voice a little steadier than I felt. His eyes, usually so guarded, met mine with a fierce resolve. "Then we shall correct that misapprehension immediately," he vowed, his hand reaching across the table to cover my knuckles, a silent promise of protection against the storm. "First by receiving your family with all honor, then by journeying to London for the little season, and finally by showing everyone that our marriage is one of genuine affection and commitment." A few days later, Thorne Manor's grand entrance hall buzzed with a welcome flurry of trunks and servants, a vivid contrast to the quiet routine Caspian and I had cultivated. Caroline, radiant in a fashionable traveling gown, rushed forward the moment the carriage door opened, enveloping me in an effusive embrace. "Gracious Elara, you've done well for yourself," she exclaimed, then cast an appraising eye over the stately hall. "Though we hardly see you now that you're a duchess. Too grand for your family, I suppose." "Don't be ridiculous," I replied, linking my arm with hers, a genuine smile touching my lips, despite the sting of her words. "I've been learning my duties here, but I've missed you all terribly." Behind her, Lord Barton, a genial man with fashionable side whiskers, shook Caspian's hand warmly. "Thorne, good to see you again. London's dreadfully dull without you." "I doubt that," Caspian replied, a small, knowing smile gracing his lips. "But we plan to remedy our absence soon. Elara and I intend to open Thorne House for the little season." Caroline clapped her hands in delight, her eyes sparkling. "Wonderful, and just in time to quash those ridiculous rumors that horrid Montague woman has been spreading." "Caroline," I admonished gently, though a part of me felt a flicker of satisfaction at her frankness, "perhaps we might settle our guests before discussing London gossip." The first dinner with our guests proved pleasant enough, though I was keenly aware of Caroline's watchful eyes, her gaze darting between Caspian and me throughout the meal. It was as though she sought to decipher a secret code, to measure the true nature of our relationship beneath the surface of polite conversation. After the gentlemen joined the ladies in the drawing room, Caroline seized her opportunity, maneuvering to sit beside me while Caspian and Lord Barton discussed politics across the room. "Well," she whispered, leaning closer, her voice dropping conspiratorially, "is it true what they say, then, that yours is a marriage of convenience only?" I met her gaze steadily, a firm resolve settling within me. "Of course not," I replied, my voice calm and clear. "Caspian and I are very happy together." Caroline's eyebrows rose, a hint of skepticism still lingering in her expression. "He's so reserved, though. Not at all like Lord Barton, who wears his heart on his sleeve." "Different men express affection differently," I said, glancing toward my husband. As if sensing my gaze, Caspian looked up from his conversation and returned my smile, a private moment of affection that warmed my heart, unspoken and understood. Caroline followed the exchange with visible interest, a surprise sound escaping her lips. "Well," she said finally, a touch of wonder in her tone, "perhaps there is something there after all." The days that followed were filled with the usual entertainments for our guests. Exhilarating riding expeditions across the estate, informative tours of Thorne Manor, and musical evenings that showcase local talents. Through it all, I remained acutely conscious of Caroline's watchful eyes, measuring each interaction between Caspian and me, searching for any inconsistency in the story of our marriage. Her scrutiny, though at times trying, was not malicious, merely curious. On the third evening, as the ladies withdrew after dinner, Caroline linked arms with me in the drawing room. "I owe you an apology, Elara," she said quietly, her vivaciousness replaced by a rare sincerity. "Whatever for?" I asked, genuinely surprised. "I believed some of the gossip," Caroline admitted, her gaze softening as she looked at me. "But I've watched you together these past days, and it's clear there's genuine affection between you and the Duke. The way he looks at you when he thinks no one is watching, it's rather beautiful, actually." My heart swelled with a gratitude I rarely felt from my family, for seeing beyond the surface. I squeezed my sister's arm gently. "Thank you for seeing the truth." Caroline, ever herself, then added with a teasing smile, "Though I still can't quite believe it's you he fell for, rather than one of us younger girls. You were always so determined to be a spinster." "Life takes unexpected turns," I replied, thinking of how dramatically my own expectations had shifted in just a few short months. The pleasant evening continued, the warmth of family and quiet companionship filling the drawing room, until a footman entered with a silver salver bearing a letter. "For you, Your Grace," Mr. Finch said, presenting it to Caspian. My husband broke the wax seal, his brow furrowing as he scanned the contents. His expression turned grim, the previous warmth in his eyes replaced by a rigid tension. "Excuse me," he said, rising abruptly. "Estate business requires my attention." After he departed, the conversation continued, but I found myself utterly distracted, a cold dread settling in my stomach. What could have necessitated such an immediate, drastic response? When Caspian didn't return after half an hour, I made my excuses to Caroline and Lord Barton, my heart pounding with a premonition of ill tidings, and went in search of him. I found him in his study, standing by the window, the letter crumpled tightly in his hand. His posture was rigid with tension, his back to me. "Caspian," I said softly, stepping fully into the room. "Is something wrong?" He turned, his expression grim, his gray eyes shadowed. "Isolde is coming to Thorne." My stomach dropped, the breath catching in my throat. "What? Why?" "She claims she left some jewelry here during her last visit, a family heirloom of great sentimental value." His mouth twisted in a humorless line. "It's a lie, of course. Another excuse to insert herself into our lives." "Can't you refuse her?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "And have her tell all of London I'm keeping her property?" "No." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I had come to recognize as a sign of his deep frustration. "She arrives tomorrow and will stay one night. No more." I moved to his side, placing a gentle, reassuring hand on his arm. "We'll face her together." Caspian covered my hand with his own, his grip firm. "I won't let her come between us, Elara. I promise you that." But that night, as we lay in bed, the heavy silk hangings of our chamber a dark cocoon around us, I found myself plagued by doubts I thought vanquished. Isolde was beautiful, sophisticated, and shared a history with Caspian that I could never match. Her determination to reclaim him was obvious, and her tactics were likely to be as ruthless as they were calculated. "You're thinking too loudly," Caspian murmured, pulling me closer against him, his warmth a comfort against my chill. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I can't help but worry about Isolde's visit." "Don't." He pressed a kiss to my temple, his lips warm against my skin. "What we have is real, Elara. Nothing she says or does can change that." I wanted desperately to believe him, to let his words banish the shadows of uncertainty. Yet as sleep finally claimed me, I couldn't quite banish the memory of Isolde's parting words. When he needs passion, when he needs someone who truly knows him, Lady Isolde Montague arrived precisely at the hour for afternoon tea. Her entrance into Thorne Manor's drawing room, a calculated tableau of surprise. Her dark hair, artfully styled, framed a face that managed to convey both delicate beauty and a thinly veiled agitation upon finding Caroline and Lord Barton already settled. My sister, never one to shy from a social skirmish, met Isolde's gaze with a sweet, disarming smile. "Lady Isolde," Caroline purred, accepting a cup of tea from my hand. How delightful to see you again. And here, in Elara's home no less. How very cozy, isn't it? Isolde's perfect composure slipped for but a fraction of a second, her cup pausing halfway to her lips before she recovered. Indeed, she replied, her gaze sliding to Caspian, who merely offered a polite, distant nod. How fortunate for all concerned. Throughout tea, Isolde maintained a relentless stream of conversation, each anecdote a meticulously crafted reference to a shared past with Caspian. She spoke of London balls, of mutual acquaintances, and always of intimate moments she and Caspian had purportedly shared. I endured it with outward composure, though inside each comment was a needle prick, a deliberate attempt to exclude me, to remind all present of a bond she believed I could never replicate. Caspian, to his credit, remained largely silent, his responses clipped and neutral, his attention more often on his tea than on Isolde's performance. Yet the air in the drawing room remained thick with unspoken tension, a battle of wills playing out beneath the surface of polite society. When the gentlemen finally excused themselves to the library for their port, leaving us women alone, Isolde's pretense of pleasantness dissolved entirely. She rearranged herself elegantly on the settee, fixing me with an unnervingly direct stare. Now then, she began, her voice dropping to a low, cutting tone. Let us speak plainly, shall we? Elara, you must know that Caspian and I share a connection that goes beyond mere history. We understand each other in a way that you, as a comparative stranger, simply cannot. My fingers tightened in my lap, but I kept my expression carefully neutral. I wonder, Caroline interjected, her voice unexpectedly sharp, if you understand him well enough to know how transparent your schemes appear to him? Isolde's perfect composure finally snapped. Attachment is not passion, she hissed, her eyes flashing with a sudden raw anger. And Caspian needs passion. He needs challenge. Things your sister, with all due respect, seems ill-equipped to provide. A surge of anger, hot and unexpected, rose within me. I had endured her veiled insults, her insinuations, but this direct assault on my character, on my worthiness, was too much. I rose to my feet, my back straightening with a strength I hadn't known I possessed. Lady Isolde, I said, my voice steady, though a tremor ran through my hands. You claim to have lost a piece of jewelry here. Let us look for it now so that you may be on your way as soon as possible. Isolde's smile returned, triumphant and razor-sharp, so eager to be rid of me. I wonder why. The search for the non-existent jewelry proved as fruitless as I had expected. We combed the blue guest suite, a charade that only highlighted the falsehood of her visit. When we rejoined the others for dinner, Isolde continued her campaign of subtle undermining, dropping references to intimate moments shared with Caspian and suggesting a depth of understanding that entirely excluded me. Yet as the evening progressed, I noticed how Caspian, to his credit, remained politely distant with Isolde, while showing small but clear signs of affection toward me. He touched my hand as he passed a dish, sought my opinion on a rather dull parliamentary matter, and smiled at my comments in a way that left no doubt as to where his heart truly lay. It was a quiet triumph, a public declaration, however subtle, that slowly began to melt the seed of doubt Isolde had so carefully planted. Later that night, as Bess helped me prepare for bed, my thoughts still wrestled with Isolde's venomous words. Had she truly known Caspian in a way I could not? Could she provide a passion or challenge that I, with all my quiet competence, lacked? A soft knock at the connecting door interrupted my troubled thoughts. Dismissing Bess with a gentle nod, I wrapped my dressing gown more tightly and called, "Enter!" Caspian stepped into the room still fully dressed, but his cravat loosened, his dark hair slightly disheveled as though he had been running his hands through it in agitation. He looked tired but determined. "Isolde leaves first thing tomorrow," he said without preamble. "I've made that abundantly clear to her." I nodded, a rush of relief washing over me. "Thank you. You've been quiet all evening," he continued, moving to take my hands in his. "Has she upset you with her insinuations?" "A little," I admitted, looking down at our clasped hands. "She seems so certain that she understands you in ways I cannot." Caspian's expression softened, and he lifted a hand to my cheek, his touch feather light. Isolde knows the man I was, not the man I am. With her I was always performing, being the person she wanted rather than myself. He paused, his gray eyes searching mine. With you, Elara, I can simply be. That's the difference she will never comprehend. And the passion she claims you need? I couldn't help asking, the challenge in my voice barely a whisper. A slow, tender smile spread across Caspian's face, a warmth I had come to cherish. My dear wife, he said, drawing me closer until our bodies almost touched. Allow me to demonstrate exactly how much passion I find in your arms. And in that moment, as his lips met mine, all lingering doubts melted away like snow in the sun. The morning brought clear skies, and Isolde's departure, her farewell brittle with barely concealed anger at her failed schemes. As her carriage disappeared down the long driveway, a sense of lightness filled me. Caspian wrapped an arm around my waist, pulling me gently against him. She won't return uninvited, he said, reading my thoughts. I've made that clear. I leaned into his embrace, a feeling of triumph mingled with the profound peace that had settled between us. Let's go to London then, he murmured, his voice firm with renewed purpose. Show society the truth of our marriage. I'd like that very much, I replied, my heart soaring with anticipation for what lay ahead. London in November was a far cry from the pastoral peace of Thorne Manor, its streets bustling, its air thick with the promise of the social season. Yet I found myself enjoying the change. Thorne House, the Duke's magnificent town residence in Mayfair, had been opened and prepared for our arrival, its grand rooms gleaming with fresh polish and seasonal decorations. Our entrance into society caused precisely the stir Caspian had intended. When we appeared at Lady Hertford's musical evening, our first public engagement, the assembled company fell into a sudden, telling hush before erupting into whispers behind fans and hands. They're all watching us, I murmured, a slight tremor in my voice, as Caspian led me through the crowd. Let them watch, he replied, his hand warm and reassuring at the small of my back. They'll see exactly what I want them to see, that I am devoted to my wife. And indeed, throughout the evening, Caspian remained attentively by my side, introducing me to influential acquaintances, soliciting my opinion in conversations, his pride in me evident to all who observed them. Your Grace, Lady Harrington, a formidable society figure, known for her sharp tongue and even sharper observations, approached us near the refreshment table, her eyes glinting with curiosity. How delightful to see you in town again, and with your Duchess no less. Lady Harrington, Caspian bowed slightly. Yes, Elara and I felt it was time to enjoy the little season together. The influential patroness turned her assessing gaze to me. Duchess, you've caused quite the sensation by capturing Thorne here. Half the eligible ladies in London were in despair when your marriage was announced. I can hardly take credit for capturing his grace, I replied with a serene smile, my composure unwavering. We simply discovered we were well suited. Indeed. Lady Harrington's eyebrows rose fractionally. Lady Isolde has been telling a somewhat different tale. Caspian's expression hardened, a subtle clenching of his jaw. Has she? How tiresome of her to spread falsehoods. So they are falsehoods, Lady Harrington pressed, clearly savoring her role as society's premier gatherer of gossip. Entirely, Caspian said firmly, taking my hand in his grip warm and possessive. My wife and I are exceedingly happy together. Any suggestion to the contrary is born of malice or wishful thinking. Lady Harrington studied us for a moment, noting our clasped hands and the genuine warmth in Caspian's eyes when he looked at me. Well, she said finally, a hint of respect in her voice, I shall make a point of saying so to anyone who inquires. You make a handsome couple, I must say. As the influential matron moved away, Caspian squeezed my hand gently. One battle won, he murmured. Of many to come, I suspect, I replied, though a sense of quiet confidence now settled within me. I was proven correct at our next engagement 2 evenings later, a dinner at the home of the Earl and Countess of Harwick. I found myself seated beside a distinguished gentleman I recognized as Sir Graham Lockhart, a close friend of Caspian's from his university days. I must say, Duchess, you're not at all what I expected, Sir Graham commented as the first course was served. Oh, I maintained my pleasant expression. And what did you expect, my lord? He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. Well, given Caspian's history and preferences, I rather thought he'd choose someone more flamboyant. I see. I took a small sip of wine. Perhaps his grace's preferences have evolved. They would have to, Sir Graham agreed, then immediately looked as though he regretted his candor. Forgive me, that was impolite. Not at all, I said calmly. I appreciate honesty, Sir Graham, and I understand that many find our match surprising, but I assure you his grace and I suit each other remarkably well. From across the table, Caspian caught my eye and offered a small smile that conveyed both support and admiration. The exchange did not go unnoticed by others at the table. You know, Sir Graham said thoughtfully, a different light in his eyes. I believe you do. I've known Caspian since Oxford, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. The simple admission filled me with a quiet, profound validation. The evening of Lady Ramsgate's ball had arrived, a night I knew would be the culmination of our London season, and perhaps the final public battle against Lady Isolde's machinations. As Bess adjusted the last pearl in my hair, I felt a familiar flutter of nerves. My gown, a rich sapphire silk, felt regal, yet still I was Elara, the governess who had never expected such a life. A soft knock at the connecting door brought me from my thoughts. Enter, I called, expecting Caspian to announce his readiness for our departure. Instead, he stepped into the room, dismissing Bess with a gentle wave of his hand before she could even curtsy. His presence, as always, filled the space, yet tonight there was a softness in his gaze. I have something for you, he said, his voice a low murmur that seemed to calm the anxious beat of my heart. From his pocket, he produced a velvet box, its dark richness a stark contrast to the shimmering silk of my gown. He opened it, and within, nestled on a bed of white satin, lay a magnificent diamond and sapphire necklace, the stones arranged in an elegant pattern that seemed to mirror the deep blue of my dress and the Greystone family tiara I was already wearing. Caspian, I breathed, my hand flying to my lips. It's beautiful. The sapphires caught the candlelight, gleaming with an inner fire. He took the necklace, his fingers brushing the nape of my neck as he fastened it, a warmth spreading through me that had nothing to do with the jewels. He turned me gently to face the mirror, his eyes meeting mine in the reflection, filled with a warmth that banished any lingering doubt. Not half so beautiful as the woman wearing it, he replied, his voice thick with emotion. I want everyone tonight to see what I see when I look at you. The most extraordinary woman in London, and the one who holds my heart completely. His words, so open and heartfelt, brought a sudden rush of tears to my eyes. This grand gesture, the opulent stones, were not merely a display of wealth, but a powerful declaration of his love. I love you, I said simply, the words of profound truth that resonated deep within me, more than I ever thought possible. He turned me fully to face him, his expression serious, tender. When I proposed our arrangement months ago, he began, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw, I could never have imagined how completely you would transform my life. I thought I was offering you security, Elara. Instead, you have given me joy. He kissed me then, a tender caress that conveyed all the emotions words could not express, a promise of a future forged not from duty, but from a profound and unexpected love. When we arrived at Lady Ramsgate's palatial townhouse, the ball was already in full swing, a dazzling spectacle of silk, lace, and diamonds beneath the grand chandeliers. Our entrance caused the now familiar ripple of interest among the guests, a sudden hush followed by a cascade of whispers. But tonight I found I no longer cared about the speculation. Let them whisper. I knew the truth of my marriage, and so did Caspian. We had scarcely completed our first dance together, moving with a harmony that felt instinctively right when Lady Isolde materialized before us. She was resplendent in a gown of deep crimson, a color chosen, I suspected, to draw every eye and display her assets to full advantage. Her smile, though flawless, held a predatory glint. Your Grace, she purred, dipping into a perfect curtsy, her gaze sweeping over me with unpracticed assessment. You look positively radiant tonight. Marriage clearly agrees with you. Her eyes then slid to Caspian, a world of suggestion in her smile, a silent claim on a shared past. And you, Caspian, as handsome as ever. Quite like old times, seeing you across a ballroom. Caspian acknowledged her with a cool, distant nod. Lady Caldwell. His hand tightened almost imperceptibly at the small of my back, a silent reassurance. If you'll excuse us, I believe the next dance is about to begin. Isolde's smile tightened, but she pressed on, laying a gloved hand on his arm, a gesture of assumed intimacy. Oh, but surely you can spare me one dance for old times' sake. Her gaze flickered to me, a calculated challenge. Unless the Duchess objects? It was a calculated move, designed to corner me. To refuse would make me appear jealous and insecure. To agree would give her precisely what she craved, private access to Caspian. I met her gaze, a serene smile fixed on my lips. My heart beat steadily. I trusted Caspian implicitly. Not at all, I said smoothly, my voice clear and steady. I'm sure His Grace would be delighted to stand up with an old friend. I shall take the opportunity to rest for a moment. I gave Caspian an almost imperceptible nod, a silent message of unwavering trust. As they moved on to the dance floor, Isolde's expression was one of barely concealed triumph, believing she had scored a point, but I knew better. I made my way to where the Dowager Duchess, Lady Eleanor, sat, observing the proceedings with a keen, assessing eye. Well played, my dear, Augusta commented, a flicker of approval in her own sharp blue eyes as I joined her. Though I wouldn't have blamed you for refusing. Caspian will handle her appropriately, I replied, watching as my husband maintained a polite but distinct formality with his former fiancée, his posture radiating a quiet, unyielding distance. In this way, society sees that I have no reason to fear Lady Isolde's influence. Augusta's eyes gleamed. You've become quite the strategist, my dear. I always knew you were the right choice for Sebastian. From across the room, I observed Isolde's face grow increasingly frustrated as Caspian rebuffed whatever she was saying to him, his responses clipped, his demeanor unyielding. When the dance finally concluded, he escorted her promptly back to her friends, a curt bow, his only farewell, and returned immediately to my side. That was illuminating, he murmured, a hint of mischief in his eyes as he offered his arm to lead me toward the refreshment room. Lady Isolde made it quite clear that she remains available, should I tire of domestic tranquility, as she put it. And your response? I asked, though a smile already played on my lips, for I knew the answer with a certainty that thrilled me. I informed her, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, that domestic tranquility with you contained more passion and joy than I ever experienced in her company. His eyes held a wicked glint. I don't believe she was pleased. I couldn't help but laugh, a genuine, bubbling sound that felt entirely new to me, a testament to the lightness he brought to my heart. I imagine not, I replied, leaning into his arm. The weight of society's scrutiny, the venom of Isolde's words, all seemed to dissipate in the warmth of his gaze and the truth of his affection. As we sipped champagne in a relatively quiet corner, absorbing the triumphant glow of the evening, Caroline and Lord Barton found us, their faces alight with eagerness. Have you heard? Caroline asked, barely containing her excitement. Lady Harrington just publicly snubbed Lady Caldwell, refused to acknowledge her at all, and she's told everyone she considers your marriage a genuine love match, Elara. The tide of opinion has completely turned. Has it indeed? Caspian said mildly, though I could see the profound satisfaction in his eyes, a quiet victory achieved. He squeezed my hand gently, his pride in me evident. Absolutely, Lord Barton confirmed, his genial face beaming. Even old Sir Graham Lockhart was singing your praises at the club yesterday, Greystone. Said he'd never seen you so content. It was an unexpected, joyous confirmation of all we had fought for, a testament to the strength of our truth. The whispers had been silenced, replaced by genuine admiration and belief in our bond. Later, as Caspian led me into the final waltz of the evening, I felt a sense of profound peace settle over me. The music swelled around us, a rich tapestry of sound, and as we moved in perfect harmony across the polished floor, it seemed as if we were the only two people in the room, utterly alone in our shared joy. The chandeliers above cast their golden glow, a beacon on our dance. rather than a harsh spotlight of judgment. "What are you thinking?" Caspian asked softly, his lips close to my ear. "That I never expected to be here," I replied honestly, my gaze lifting to meet his. "Dancing with my husband, wearing diamonds and sapphires, the envy of London society." The weight of the sapphire ring on my finger, a physical reminder of our chosen legacy, felt lighter than air. "Regrets?" His hand tightened slightly at my waist, a gentle inquiry. "Not one," I assured him, my smile genuine and radiant. "Though I do miss Thorne, the peace there, the sense of home." Caspian smiled, the private smile he reserved only for me, a warmth radiating from him that touched my very soul. "Then we shall return for Christmas, just the two of us. I would like that very much." As the dance concluded, he defied convention by raising my hand to his lips, a tender public declaration of his affection in full view of the assembly. A ripple of whispers, but this time they were approving smiles. Across the room, I saw Lady Isolde watching us, her expression a complex mixture of anger and something that might almost have been regret. For a moment our eyes met, and I felt a surprising flash of pity for the other woman. For all her beauty and accomplishments, Isolde had never known the kind of love that now filled my life, a love based on genuine respect, understanding, and shared values. With a small internal nod of acknowledgement, I turned away. Isolde belonged to the past. Our future, Caspian's and mine, lay elsewhere. Thorne Manor, draped in fresh snow and adorned with festive wreaths, welcomed us home with a quiet embrace. My heart, still humming with the triumph of London, lifted further at the sight of its stately facade. London had been a necessary battle, fought and won, but this place, this winter sanctuary, was where Caspian and I had truly found each other. "Home at last," Caspian murmured, helping me from the carriage, his gaze as warm as the glow from the parlor windows. "I've arranged a surprise for you." "Have you?" I smiled up at him, a thrill of anticipation running through me. "What sort of surprise?" He offered his arm, not towards the main entrance, but around the side of the house, drawing me toward the lake. As we rounded the corner, I gasped. The pathway to the lake had been lined with glowing lanterns, casting a warm golden light across the pristine snow. At the lake's edge, a small pavilion stood, similarly illuminated and decorated with sprays of winter greenery. It was a vision of enchantment, a perfect picture against the twilight. "What is this?" I breathed, delighted and utterly bewildered. Caspian's hand tightened gently on my arm as he guided me along the shimmering path. "The anniversary of our first meeting," he explained, his voice soft. "1 year ago today, I first saw you at Lady Cavendish's, standing quietly in that alcove while your sisters danced." I stared at him in astonishment. "You remember the exact day?" "I remember everything about that night," he said, his gaze fixed on mine, full of a tenderness that melted any lingering chill. "The lavender of your gown, the way you tried to prevent your father from approaching me, the moment our eyes first met." We reached the pavilion where a small table had been set with an elegant supper for two, awaiting us under the soft, inviting glow of the lanterns. A brazier provided a comforting warmth against the December chill, and a bottle of champagne waited in a silver bucket. "Caspian, this is beyond lovely," I said, my voice thick with emotion as he helped me remove my cloak. "But surely our wedding day would be the more traditional anniversary to celebrate." "We'll celebrate that too," he assured me, pouring champagne into 2 crystal glasses. "But this day marks the beginning of a journey neither of us anticipated. It was the moment fate, or providence, or perhaps just simple good fortune, brought us together." He handed me a glass, then raised his own, his eyes shining. "To unexpected blessings." "To unexpected blessings," I echoed, touched beyond words. As we dined on delicate fare prepared by Mrs. Davies, I couldn't help but notice Caspian's unusual nervousness, a quality so rare in him that it made my heart ache with tenderness. "Is something wrong?" I asked finally, reaching across the table to take his hand. "Not wrong," he assured me quickly, his fingers tightening around mine. "But I do have something I wish to say to you, Elara. Something important." He paused, gathering his thoughts, his gaze unwavering. "When I proposed our marriage, I offered you a cold, practical arrangement, security for your family in exchange for your presence as my duchess. It was a business transaction, nothing more. He shook his head gently. Please let me finish. I entered that arrangement believing myself incapable of love, or perhaps unworthy of it. My father had taught me that emotion was weakness, that duty was all that mattered. I had accepted that as truth. He looked around the charming pavilion, a restored haven by the frozen rose garden. But you, Elara, you changed everything. With your quiet strength, your unwavering integrity, your gentle heart, you showed me that love isn't weakness. It is the greatest strength we possess. Caspian reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. I gave you my mother's ring when we became engaged, as tradition dictated, he said, his voice husky with emotion. But now I want to give you this, chosen by me, for you alone. He opened the box to reveal an exquisite sapphire and diamond ring, reminiscent of the necklace he had given me in London, yet uniquely beautiful in its design. I love you, Elara, he said simply, his gray eyes glistening, not out of duty or convenience or arrangement, but with every part of my being. He closed the box, holding the ring delicately. Will you accept this ring as a symbol of that love, as a renewal of our vows, not as Duke and Duchess this time, but simply as Caspian and Elara? Tears filled my eyes as I extended my hand, my voice a bare whisper. Yes, I said, with all my heart. Yes. As he slid the ring onto my finger, placing it beside the emerald betrothal ring, his own eyes glistened with unshed emotion. I never expected to find such happiness, he admitted, his thumb stroking my hand. To discover that the arrangement I proposed would lead to the greatest joy I've ever known. Nor did I replied softly, my gaze meeting his. I thought I was sacrificing my own happiness once more for my family's security. Instead, I found everything I never dared to dream of. Caspian rose and drew me to my feet, leading me to the edge of the pavilion. The winter night was clear, stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky, their light reflecting on the frozen surface of the lake. Look, he said, pointing towards the house. Every window of Thorne Manor glowed with candlelight, transforming the great house into a beacon of warmth and welcome against the darkness. It was beautiful, magical, a perfect symbol of the light we had brought into each other's lives. Our home, I murmured, leaning into his strength, feeling utterly content. Our future. And what a future it will be, Caspian said, drawing me fully into his arms. I have plans, you know, for the estate, for our charitable work, for our family someday. The mention of family brought a warm flush to my cheeks. About that, I said softly, looking up at him, a smile playing on my lips. I have news of my own to share. Caspian's eyes widened as understanding dawned, a breathtaking joy slowly spreading across his face. Elara, are you saying? I nodded, my smile radiant. Dr. Morrison confirmed it yesterday before we left London. We will have an heir to Thorne Manor by midsummer. For a moment, Caspian seemed unable to speak, utterly overwhelmed. Then, with a joy I had never before witnessed in him, he lifted me off my feet and spun me in a slow, careful circle, his laughter echoing across the frozen lake. Careful, I protested, laughing with him. Your heir might object to such treatment. He set me down gently, his hands moving to cradle my face, his eyes shining with profound emotion. You have made me the happiest of men, he said, his voice thick. My Elara, my heart, my unexpected Duchess. As his lips met mine in a kiss that held both tenderness and passion, I reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought us to this moment. From a marriage of convenience to a union of souls, from strangers bound by arrangement to partners united by the deepest love. Snow began to fall gently around us, soft flakes catching in our hair and on our shoulders as we stood together beneath the winter sky. Behind us, Thorne Manor glowed with welcome, a fortress of warmth. Before us stretched a future filled with promise. Caspian had always believed himself immune to love. I had proven him completely wrong, and in that beautiful error lay our greatest blessing. Does not love, after all, find us in the most unexpected of places, transforming our lives in ways we never dared to imagine?